On a crisp morning in early November 2016, the tranquil town of Redding, California, awoke to an unsettling silence. Sherri Papini, a 34-year-old mother of two, had vanished. Known for her regular jogs along the picturesque but now hauntingly empty trails, her disappearance abruptly transformed a routine day into one of mystery and dread. As autumn leaves fell and the search intensified, as family and the tight-knit community grappled with an unsettling array of questions. What had happened to Sherri on that fateful jog? Was she the victim of a random act, or was there a more sinister plot at play? The uncertainty permeated the air, as dense and palpable as the morning fog that rolls over Redding's landscapes. Then, on Thanksgiving morning, a twist as startling as her disappearance. Sherri was found alive, bound and battered, on a roadside many miles from home. Relief washed over the community, but it was tinged with confusion and disbelief. Sherri's return did not bring the closure everyone had hoped for. Instead, it opened a new chapter filled with confusion. She claimed abduction by two mysterious figures, a story that defied clear understanding and left even seasoned investigators puzzled. The Sherri Papini saga, much like the winding paths she once jogged, is a journey through shadows and uncertainty. It compels us to look beyond the obvious, to question the narratives we are presented with, and to confront the unsettling notion that truth can sometimes be as elusive as a mirage. As we delve into her story, we find ourselves not just tracing the facts, but also navigating the turbulent waters of human experience, where truth and mystery often intertwine, leaving us with more questions than answers. Let's explore this perplexing case. The disappearance. The day was November 2nd, 2016, a day that would etch itself indelibly into the collective memory of Redding, California. Sherri Papini, a 34-year-old mother of two young children, set out on her regular routine, a jog along the familiar and scenic trails near her home. This was her time, a brief respite from the demands of motherhood and daily life. The autumn air was crisp, the sky a clear blue. Nothing hinted at the eerie turn this ordinary day was about to take. As the hours ticked by, Sherri did not return as expected. Keith, Sherri's husband, returned from his job at Best Buy later that day, anticipating the usual family evening. However, he was met with an unsettling silence. The kids were at daycare, but there was no sign of Sherri. Her phone, located by Keith using the Find My iPhone app, was discovered at the intersection of Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail, about a mile from their home. It lay on the ground, headphones entangled with strands of blonde hair, as if carelessly discarded in a sudden moment of urgency or struggle. This alarming discovery was the first tangible sign that something was amiss. Keith, now deeply concerned, contacted local law enforcement. The Shasta County Sheriff's Office immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. A missing person report was filed, and an investigation launched without delay. The community's tranquility was shattered as the news of Sherri's disappearance spread, rippling through the town with a mixture of disbelief and fear. The response from the community was swift. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers came together, a united front against the unknown. Search parties were organized, covering the jogging routes Sherri was known to frequent, the surrounding areas, and the nearby woods. Flyers with Sherri's picture were rapidly distributed, her smiling face becoming a symbol of the community's concern and determination. Law enforcement, meanwhile, began their meticulous work. The area where Sherri's phone was found became a focal point of the investigation. Officers scoured the scene for any evidence, while detectives began piecing together the timeline of her disappearance. Door-to-door inquiries were made, and local businesses were asked to provide any surveillance footage that might offer a clue. As night fell on Redding, a sense of urgency enveloped the search efforts. The crisp air of the morning had given way to a chilling evening breeze, reflective of the growing concern in the hearts of those searching. Helicopters with searchlights combed the terrain from above, while ground teams, aided by search dogs, persisted in their efforts, refusing to let the darkness impede them. This intensive search, however, yielded more questions than answers. With no substantial leads or sightings, the mystery of Sherri Papini's disappearance deepened. The community, once a portrait of serene suburban life, now lay under the shadow of an unsettling and heart-wrenching mystery. Sherri's family braced themselves for the uncertain days ahead, clinging to hope amidst the enveloping fear. The search. As the realization of Sherri Papini's disappearance settled in, a vast and methodical search operation unfolded. The serene landscape of Redding, California, transformed into a hive of activity, with law enforcement and volunteers converging with a singular mission: to find Sherri. The Shasta County Sheriff's Office spearheaded the operation, deploying resources strategically. They established a command center, a hub of activity where information flowed in and out, and search parties were coordinated. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, joined the efforts, bringing in specialized expertise and additional manpower. The search expanded beyond the immediate vicinity of Sherri's last known location. Teams scoured the wider areas, combing through fields, woods, and trails. The terrain was challenging, with dense underbrush and rugged landscapes, but the searchers were undeterred. They moved methodically, grid by grid, leaving no stone unturned. Drones buzzed overhead, providing an aerial perspective of the vast areas, while divers explored nearby water bodies, a grim reminder of the possibilities they faced. Simultaneously, detectives worked tirelessly, sifting through Sherri's life for clues. They conducted extensive interviews with family, friends, and acquaintances, building a profile and seeking any information that might point to her whereabouts or the circumstances of her disappearance. Digital forensics experts analyzed Sherri's online presence and phone records, tracing her digital footprint in the hopes of uncovering a lead. The community's involvement was remarkable. Volunteers poured in, driven by a shared sense of purpose. They were neighbors, friends, and complete strangers, all touched by the plight of the Papini family. Community-led search teams formed, some on foot, others on ATVs and bikes, covering different areas. Local businesses contributed, providing supplies, food, and equipment to support the search efforts. Flyers and posters were distributed far and wide, Sherri's face becoming a symbol of the community's resolve. As days turned into weeks, the search efforts continued with unwavering intensity. Candlelight vigils were held, and social media campaigns were launched, spreading Sherri's story nationally, even globally. The hashtag #FindSherriPapini became a rallying cry, a digital beacon in the quest for answers. The return. The narrative of Sherri Papini's disappearance took a sudden and dramatic turn on the morning of Thanksgiving, November 24, 2016. After 3 weeks of relentless searching, the unexpected happened. Sherri was found alive. This development was as startling as her initial disappearance, bringing a torrent of emotions to the forefront. In the early hours of that morning, approximately 150 miles south of where she was last seen, Sherri was discovered on the side of a road in Yolo County. She was found by a passing motorist who immediately alerted the authorities. The news of her discovery spread rapidly, sending shockwaves through the community and law enforcement agencies involved in the search. Sherri was in a dire state when found. She was bound, her body marked with bruises and burns, her hair chopped off, and she was significantly underweight. The image of Sherri, once vibrant and full of life, now frail and wounded, was heart-wrenching. She was quickly taken to a hospital for medical attention. Her physical condition spoke volumes of the ordeal she had presumably endured, raising more questions than answers. The initial reaction of Sherri's family was a complex tapestry of emotions. Relief, undoubtedly, was paramount. The prospect of a family reunited after enduring the torment of the unknown was a powerful sentiment. However, this relief was tinged with confusion, concern, and an overwhelming sense of disbelief. How had Sherri ended up so far from home? What had happened to her during those lost weeks? The family grappled with these questions while preparing for her return. The community's response mirrored that of the family. Relief was widespread, and there was a collective sense of gratitude that she had been found alive, a rarity in missing persons cases that extend for weeks. However, this gratitude was accompanied by a flurry of speculation and concern. The mysterious circumstances of her return added a new layer of complexity to the case. Law enforcement's reaction was measured and cautious. While acknowledging the positive outcome of Sherri being found alive, they were acutely aware that this was not the end of the investigation, but a new chapter. Their focus shifted to understanding what had happened during the time she was missing. The details provided by Sherri, her account of being kidnapped by two women, were treated with both urgency and scrutiny. The task was now to piece together her movements and experiences, a puzzle that seemed as complex as the initial search. The mystery unravels. With Sherri Papini's unexpected return, the focus shifted towards unraveling the mystery of her alleged abduction. The details Sherri provided were both harrowing and perplexing, setting off a complex phase in the investigation. According to Sherri, she was abducted at gunpoint by two Hispanic women while jogging. She described her captors covering their faces, speaking in Spanish most of the time, and keeping her in a dark room. Sherri recounted being physically abused and branded during her captivity, adding a disturbing layer to her narrative. This account immediately raised questions for investigators, not only about the identity and motive of the alleged abductors, but also about the plausibility of the story itself. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, delved into Sherri's account with a critical eye. They faced the challenging task of validating her story while considering other possible scenarios. The investigation involved combing through surveillance footage from the area she was allegedly abducted, as well as the place where she was found. Despite extensive searches, no significant evidence corroborating her account of the kidnapping surfaced. Forensic analysts examined the physical evidence, including the restraints Sherri was found with and the branding she reported. Medical examinations provided insights, but they also led to more questions than answers. The lack of defensive wounds and other factors raised doubts about the nature of her injuries and whether they aligned with her account of events. The investigators also scrutinized Sherri's past and her digital footprint. They looked into her personal life, relationships, and even her online activities for any leads or patterns that might provide context to her story. This examination revealed a complex picture of Sherri, but no clear connections to her purported abduction. As the investigation progressed, inconsistencies in Sherri's narrative began to emerge. For instance, the description of her captors and the dynamics of the abduction were vague and at times contradictory. The lack of any ransom demand, combined with the absence of witnesses or any form of direct evidence of the abduction, further muddied the waters. The media and public scrutiny intensified as these inconsistencies came to light. Speculation and theories abounded, ranging from skepticism about her account to various conspiracy theories. This public discourse created a parallel narrative, one filled with doubt and conjecture, which often clashed with the official investigation. Law enforcement, despite facing these challenges, continued their meticulous work. They followed up on every lead, however tenuous, and kept an open line of communication with the Papini family. Their commitment to uncovering the truth remained steadfast, even in the face of growing complexity and public pressure. The investigation deepens. In the wake of Sherri Papini's return and the complexities surrounding her story, law enforcement's investigation intensified, evolving into a multifaceted probe that delved into every conceivable angle and lead. The primary challenge was the lack of direct evidence. Investigators tirelessly combed through hours of surveillance footage from the areas surrounding both the site of Sherri's alleged abduction and where she was found. Despite this extensive effort, they were unable to capture any footage that corroborated her account of being kidnapped. This lack of visual evidence was a significant hurdle, as it left a void in the timeline of events that Sherri had described. Additionally, law enforcement sought to verify Sherri's movements and interactions in the days leading up to her disappearance. They conducted numerous interviews with friends, family, and acquaintances, aiming to construct a detailed picture of her life and state of mind during that period. These interviews were crucial, providing insights, though often leading to more questions. They also re-examined her digital footprint, analyzing phone records, emails, and social media activity for any clues or patterns that might shed light on her disappearance. One of the more intriguing avenues explored was the analysis of the physical evidence, particularly the restraints Sherri was found with and the brand marks she claimed were inflicted by her captors. Forensic experts scrutinized these elements, looking for any telltale signs that could either substantiate or contradict her story. However, The results of these analyses were not conclusive enough to provide a clear direction to the investigation. The investigation faced challenges not only in piecing together evidence, but also in managing the public narrative surrounding the case. The growing speculation and media attention often resulted in a flood of tips and leads, many of which were well-meaning, but ultimately led nowhere. Sifting through these required a significant allocation of resources, yet it was a necessary task to ensure no potential lead was overlooked. Another challenge was the psychological aspect of the investigation. Law enforcement had to consider various scenarios, including the possibility of Sherri's account being influenced by trauma or other factors. Interviews and interactions with Sherri were conducted with this in mind, ensuring that they were sensitive yet thorough, a balancing act that required skill and experience. Throughout this period, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office and the FBI maintained a posture of cautious openness. They were careful not to publicly dismiss Sherri's account, aware of the complexities surrounding cases of trauma and abduction. At the same time, they remained vigilant in exploring other possibilities, conscious of the need to follow where the evidence led. The Unraveling. In August 2020, Sherri Papini was interviewed by a federal agent and a Shasta County Sheriff's detective. During this interview, she provided detailed descriptions of the two Hispanic women she claimed had kidnapped her. Despite being presented with evidence that contradicted her story, Papini continued to assert that she had been abducted. In reality, investigators had recently discovered that she was actually staying with an ex-boyfriend during the time she claimed to have been kidnapped. Sherri Papini's ex-boyfriend, James Reyes, assisted her in staging the fake kidnapping and harbored her in his apartment in Costa Mesa, California, for the duration of her disappearance. The DNA on the shirt she was wearing at the time she was found was tested, and it belonged to Reyes. Additionally, phone records indicated that they had been in contact, sending flirty text messages dating back to 2011. Furthermore, she had inflicted harm on herself to support her false statements. Despite these revelations, Papini maintained her abduction story during the interview. In March 2022, everything changed. Sherri Papini was taken into custody by the FBI on March 3rd, facing allegations of deceiving federal agents and fabricating her own abduction to be with her former boyfriend. Sherri Papini was charged with making false statements to a federal law enforcement officer and engaging in mail fraud. The charges stemmed from the extensive search efforts that her fabricated abduction story had prompted, including significant expenses incurred by law enforcement, as well as donations received from the public under false pretenses. On April 18, 2022, Papini entered a guilty plea to 2 charges: mail fraud and making false statements, as specified in a 35-count indictment. In return for her plea, prosecutors consented to a sentence that aligns with the lower spectrum of the federal sentencing guidelines. That same month, Sherri's husband, Keith Papini, filed for divorce and sought full custody of their 2 children. In a statement, he explained that he wanted to provide a loving, safe, stable environment for the pair's children, and I believe the requested orders are consistent with that goal and the best interests of the children. In September 2022, Papini received a sentence of 18 months incarceration and was ordered to pay a fine of $300,000. She completed her prison term in August 2023 and was subsequently transferred to a halfway house. On September 29, 2023, she left the Sacramento halfway home. We will likely never know why Sherri did what she did. Join the conversation. Drop a comment to share your thoughts and insights. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating content. Thanks for tuning in to Really Unreal. Join us next time for a deep dive into another fascinating case. Stay curious, stay connected, stay with Really Unreal.